You're listening to All of It. I'm Allison Stewart. Remember that snowstorm we had a week ago? The one that caused the cancellation of our February Get Lit with All of It book club event at the New York Public Library? Well, we didn't want to let this opportunity slip away, so we're going to have that Get Lit event this Thursday, but right here at the WNYC space in Soho, the green space downstairs. I'll be in conversation with Angela Flournoy, the author of The Wilderness. The novel follows a group of women through their friendships, through good times and bads in New York City and LA. It's about chosen family, social justice, and navigating the challenging wilderness of young adulthood. That is happening this Thursday, March 5th at 6 p.m. Tickets are free. They will go fast. So reserve yours now at wnyc.org/events. Again, that's wnyc.org/events, and I'll see you this Thursday. Dearest gentle reader, one of the most beloved noble families has returned. Bridgerton is back. If you're not familiar with the Regency-era drama, each season centers on a different child of the very fancy Bridgerton household, making their debut at a formal ball in hopes of finding a prospect for marriage. This season focuses on the mischievous and artistic Benedict. It's the second eldest son's re-entry into society. I said re-entry because he's just not that into it, until he becomes smitten with a mysterious young woman at a masquerade ball.
You're not like the other young ladies, you know. It is a relief.
And what is wrong with the other young ladies?
Well, I'm only... They are...
Constantly pursuing you. While I can imagine that is taxing for you, you must remember that those young ladies have spent their entire lives preparing for the pursuit. Hundreds of hours acquiring their accomplishments, endless fittings, not to mention the 3 hours alone it takes to do up their hair for the 5 or 6 hours they will be at this ball. All in the hope that you might simply notice them.
Them? Are you not also hoping to be noticed?
In Cinderella-like fashion, a bell rings in midnight and she's gone. All Benedict has to go on to find her is the memory of what she wore, the shape of her lips, and the glove she left behind. And then there's something else that Benedict doesn't know. The woman named Sophie, well, she's a maid, and it won't be the last time he sees her. Who knew that cottages were going to become the big thing in romance this year? If you know, you know. The show is a cool mix of a period setting with modern twists, including inclusivities of bodies and race, and this season having some real talk about queerness and class differences. Actor Luke Thompson, who plays Benedict Bridgerton, is here with me now in studio to discuss Bridgerton Season 4, which is now streaming on Netflix. It is very nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you too.
So you got your start in theater. You went to RADA.
That's right, yeah.
To the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts.
I did.
What were you doing before the Bridgerton script came your way?
Oh, a lot of theatre, basically. Yeah. I mean, I did mostly theatre for the first, I want to say like good, 5-6 years in my career. And I've always been interested, I think, my first job was at the Globe, Shakespeare's Globe, and then I went on from that to do a couple of Shakespeare plays also at the Almeida, the Almeida Theatre, and that was much more sort of like a modern, there was Hamlet, but, they were set modern. And so I sort of feel like I've always been very interested in how you take these like really old texts and try and make them sing again and try and sort of tap into why they've lasted and not try and sort of just do, a traditional retelling, just sort of like reiterating again the same old things until they get very boring. And so I do feel like in a strange kind of way Bridgerton sort of like inscribes itself in that because it is something that takes, as you say, the trappings of Regency and all of that, but is always most keen on talking about just the human soul and particularly also just representing, the modern world as it is as well. So it's this fine balance, I think, of being, a little bit modern as well as traditional, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it started in December of 2020. And since the show follows all of his older siblings, we've gotten to know Benedict.
That's right.
You've gotten to know Benedict. What was Benedict like when we first met him back in 2020? And then how has he evolved into season 4?
Well, he's sort of been, he hasn't evolved in that he's so far, obviously in season 4 he does, but he's someone he's got a very good customer-facing front.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
What can I help you with?
I think he's a very amenable and open and sensitive person. First and foremost. And I think we've seen him in the last few seasons sort of almost a little bit on the periphery of his own life. He's always sort of going off doing escapades, meeting people. And he hasn't really found his place, I think. And so I guess what's interesting I always find with this character is that he's someone who, it's sort of like, it's interesting to make him the romantic hero. He goes on the sort of opposite journey that a lot of romantic heroes go, particularly Regency romantic heroes. You know, a lot of it is about, you know, these very rigid and stern men being softened by women. You know, that's sort of often the trajectory. And with Benedict, he's not. He's very soft, often too soft. And actually, a lot of this season is about sort of seeing that that's all a little bit of a cover maybe, and that he's maybe sort of terrified of really giving everything to someone, which is, let's face it, what falling in love is. It's really sort of opening yourself up to someone and letting go a little bit. So, but I think what's fun is that, as I say, it was really fun as an actor to play with the fact that he's got this shiny front that we've explored for the last 3 seasons. And now we get to sort of make him essentially fall apart for season 4.
It's kind of interesting. I think in season 4 he has kind of ennui about the whole thing. He's like, oh, this again.
Exactly.
I got to do this again. I'll just show up. Maybe I'll show up late. I'm not sure if I'm even going to show up.
Exactly. It's exactly that. Yeah. That's where he starts. And I think, I mean, that's sort of, there's a little bit of Romeo and Juliet in there, is there? The idea of, like, you know, Romeo doesn't want to go to the party, and then that's where he meets Juliet. So it is, I think there's an element of that.
Listeners, do you have a question for Luke Thompson? He plays Benedict Bridgerton on the show Bridgerton. It's now streaming on Netflix. So when he meets this woman at this ball, he becomes sort of fascinated with her and quickly. Why is he so fascinated with her, and why does it happen so quickly?
I think because I think there's a lovely sort of symbolism in the fact that they are two characters that are quite guarded, but they meet masked. And I do think as a sort of, it's quite Shakespearean actually, this idea that like a boundary, like a mask, is actually something that can make someone feel much freer to be themselves. It's like, you know, when you meet a stranger, sometimes you talk to them in a much more open way than you'd ever talk to someone that you really know. And so I just think there's that element. And also I think Benedict is sort of used to being, you know, in the world of the ton and seeing the world of a ton as a sort of world of networking where everyone's just sort of, you know, slightly looking over their shoulder to see if there's someone more interesting to talk to at these parties. And I think it's a detail from the book. I think
LA.
There you go. You said it, not me. But, you know, and actually I think what's lovely is that, and it's a detail from the book, is that in the book he sees Sophie looking at this chandelier. And obviously because she's never been to one of these before, she's just completely transported and beaming at the idea of even being there. And I think he picks up on that because I think there's part of him that's actually sort of, there is a big part, you know, he's a fantasist, Benedict. He loves wonder, and he loves, you know, the sort of, I don't know, like being in like big stories. So I feel like he sort of sees that. The thing that's interesting is that's not necessarily the biggest part of the Sophie character. Sophie's actually, you know, she has this small part of herself that likes to dream. And Benedict is a dreamer, really. So I guess he sort of like spots something like that at the ball, yeah.
Meanwhile, while he's searching for this woman without a glove, he becomes interested in Sophie the maid, and they have a will we, won't we can't, we must, a will affair. She's played by Yeren Ha. What did she bring? What unique skill did she bring to her character?
So many. I think she's an extraordinary actress, and I'm really glad that she's getting her flowers and her moment right now because, you know, it's such a particular role. I think it demands quite a lot of I think what she has is this real, and it's weird because it sounds like maybe it's not a word that always has positive connotations today, but she's serious, I think, as a character. And I think she doesn't mess about. She lives in the real world, Sophie, I think, and she's very loath to sort of let herself dream and let herself go, essentially. But she does have this spark, and she is sparky, and she does have that sort of sense of humour. It's just that she's also very, serious. And so I think like it's a very particular concoction of qualities. And I just think, as soon as we did the audition on Zoom, the chemistry read on Zoom. On Zoom? Yeah, it turns out you can.
You can get that to go on Zoom.
Well, it's funny. I think
that's interesting.
Well, it's just, look, auditions are so artificial anyway. The setup of like, okay, stand here and let's see if this works is so strange anyway, that often there are loads of, like, the fact that it's a Zoom call is just yet another obstacle and when you can feel like you can actually talk to each other despite the obstacles, that's when you know that there's something. I also think we've all gotten a little more versed in Zoom since the pandemic. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think actually we're more able to come across on Zoom, I think, than maybe we used to.
For a little while, though, it felt like Zoom was a barrier.
Yeah.
But I guess we got past it.
We got past that. Yeah, maybe a little bit. I think we're just more used, and it's also because we film ourselves all the time. Like, I just think we're more used to that whole thing. But no, I mean, it was a wonderful audition, and I obviously don't have a say. I'm not a casting director, but you just know when it's, it's just when you found the person you're looking for, you just know, I think. And yeah, you could feel it in the room, I think.
We've got a question for you.
Yes.
Says, what are you doing in New York City? Are you going to do a play here?
I'd absolutely love to do a play in New York. That would be the dream. I haven't managed to yet. There are always possibilities, and then it never quite worked out. But I'd absolutely love to. But I'm.
Have you seen anything?
You know what? This time round, I haven't. But I can't remember. When was Merrily We Roll Along? I've lost complete track of time. Merrily We Roll Along was about a year ago when I last went to New York. That's the last time I think I went to Broadway. There's so little time on these press tours, annoyingly. But yeah, Merrily We Roll Along blew me away. I thought it was wonderful. Yeah.
We're talking to Luke Thompson. He's here with me to discuss Benedict Bridgerton's character on Bridgerton. It's now streaming on Netflix. If you'd like to ask him a question, the phone lines are open, 212-433-9692, 212-433-WNYC. So the showrunner of Bridgerton said that a lot of this season focuses on the idea of intimacy and pleasure. What have she and the rest of the crew done to create an atmosphere that allows you as an actor to be comfortable on set?
You mean in terms of intimacy scenes specifically? Yeah. I mean, I think Bridgerton has been a bit of a trailblazer when it comes to this, I think. Look, I mean, I think the thing, it's sort of, for me, stranger what used to happen before than what happens now. As in, like, I just feel like by having an intimacy coordinator on set, which is, a new thing that they now do, which is essentially, it's similar to having like a fight director, but for a sex scene.
She's a choreographer.
Yeah, she's a choreographer. And I think what that does is it's about taking those scenes seriously and treating them in a grown-up way. Because you'd never say to two actors, okay, there's a fight scene, so just have at it. And yet, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And yet sex scenes have been a bit more loose and a little more sort of grey area. And also the problem is, I think a lot of that is about ego. Because actually, actors need to be told often that what feels good doesn't necessarily look good. And so actually you need an outside eye. And sometimes, the director is not necessarily, the director's got other things to think about. But I think to really zero in on the story beats of an intimacy scene is really great. And look, it's obviously those scenes are all about trust, right? And so if I was lucky because I'd been working with Yaron for a while. And so, we developed a bit of a shorthand, and that helps obviously with the intimacy coordinator. But sometimes sex scenes, you come in and you're doing them with a day player who's literally just there on that one day or 2 days on set. So you need that third person to liaise, because otherwise they could feel a little bit like they have to agree to stuff that they don't necessarily want to do. But so broadly, I just think I understand. I don't. Honestly, I don't understand this whole idea of like, they wreck some sort of spontaneity, because actually, the whole idea of acting is you're given a structure to be spontaneous in. It's not just like, I'll just do whatever. And so, I just think it's part and parcel of a effort, I think, to take those scenes seriously. And I think it's very important, particularly with a show like Bridgerton, where sex and intimacy are incredibly important, a huge part of the show. That needs to be taken, just taken seriously.
You want to take a call?
Yeah, why not?
Let's talk to Cecilia in Highland Park. Hi, Cecilia. Thank you so much for making the time to call all of it.
Hello, Allison. Hello, Luke Thompson.
Hello, Cecilia.
Benedict, if I may.
Yes, you may.
So I have been indulging myself in Bridgerton. My partner now, my husband, as of last October, says, "Have you been Bridgertoning again?" So the screener so let me just preface this by saying I had total knee replacement last Wednesday, and I'm recovering from it. The first day was great.
Yes.
Then the block wore off, and I'm crazy. But so I've been telling everybody I'm drowning my sorrows in Bridgerton.
Oh.
I've been having one Bridgerton episode, and I worked myself up to where I was at episode 4. Now I'm on, season 4. Now I'm on episode 5. And have you had anybody, this is my question.
Yes.
The screener made me ask you, have you had anybody else tell you that they use the Bridgerton scenes in their intimate life?
Oh, wow. Did not see that coming.
You know what?
I did not see that coming.
I wish people would tell me more. They haven't. I haven't had any interactions like that, sadly. It's funny. I wonder whether people would... I'm trying to think of a time when that maybe... Yeah, I think I remember, you know what, the main thing I remember actually, it's not necessarily the intimate scenes, but I remember I remember someone coming to me during the pandemic. She was a care worker during the pandemic and saying she watched, Bridgerton sort of carried her through in a way.
Yeah,
because I think it's such a sort of positive show and it's got so much, it does sort of like whisk you away. So as I say, it's just really nice, Cecilia, to hear that... That's what it does, because I think that's what this show is for. I think is just to bring a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of escape to your life. I don't know about intimate scenes, sadly, but I can let you know.
One thing I think the show does, several things it does besides being a romantic period piece, is it brings up subtler issues in a really smart way. And one way I thought this season was Benedict's queerness. It comes up in a discussion with Sophie. As they get to know one another, let's play this clip because Benedict has been with men, he's been with women, and he is clearly not ashamed of it. Let's listen.
Society's rules make little men out of all of us, or little women, as it were. Society should not be allowed to dictate the rules of how one lives life or who one loves. Well, I am capable of caring for you just as I have cared for women I've known who are of the ton, just as I have cared for some men whom I've known intimately. And I refuse to be at all ashamed about that.
What did you think when you read that?
Yeah, I think it's a really lovely scene because I think, again, it feels very true to Benedict in the sense that it's sort of quite an atypical coming out scene, in inverted commas, because there isn't, I think the thing that's so lovely about Benedict as a character is he, particularly as a male character actually, is that he really doesn't seem, and throughout the last few seasons as well, he's not someone who is stressed about sex. And as a man, he's not someone who feels... I think male sexuality can sometimes feel quite boxy. It's like either you're this or you're this. And part of those stories often is about like someone working out who they are and fighting repression. And obviously there's, huge value in those stories, and those stories exist. But I think what's lovely and distinctive about Benedict is that it doesn't seem to have, for him, a huge bearing on his sense of identity. And actually what I love about this scene specifically is that although, as I say, he is coming out to Sophie up to a point, I really believe him when he says, I don't think there's anything to be ashamed about. And I think he does it as a gesture to Sophie in a sort of attempt to be open and honest with her, rather than to sort of get something off his chest, maybe. And I just find that quite refreshing, particularly for a male character. I think that's a really nice, it's a nice distinctive touch, I think.
Let's talk to Sana, who's calling in from Brooklyn. Hi, Sana. Thanks for taking the time to call all of it. You're on the air with Luke Thompson.
Hi, Allison. My name is Sana, like the sun. And Luke, I'm a huge fan of your acting, so it's really great to be able to ask you a question.
Hi.
But I was also wondering about, the last 3 seasons, Benedict has been this, artsy, bisexual, kind of, he seems a little lost and maybe not quite fulfilled, but he's just doing his thing. And then we see him in this season kind of, latch onto this one woman, and it feels a little out of character. And, you just get swept up in the Bridgerton universe, and it wasn't like a gap in the storyline that really bothered me too much. But I am curious, what you have to say about that, and maybe any insights you have on that transformation.
No, that's really interesting. I mean, I guess the thing, it's interesting, the out of character thing, because I think the most interesting moments in life are the moments when we act out of character. I think those are always the most exciting moments. And I think, obviously we put a lot of value on self-knowledge nowadays, but often, like, I think you can be surprised by yourself. And I do think, like, I think if you're referring to in terms of the last few seasons, like, I truly do believe that Benedict could have ended up with a man or a woman, I think. But I also think that what's refreshing is that sex, for him anyway, is sort of explored as a force that actually seems to be sort of that he's exploring, but it's actually because it's something that he's not worried about and he feels very comfortable in. It sort of like protects him from falling in love in a weird kind of way. Mm-hmm. And actually, I think, it's that saying, love is where it falls. And I think it just so happens that it's Sophie. And I think the journey that he goes on with Sophie is really, really interesting. And as I say, I think it's really refreshing to have a story where a character does, have experiences with men and women, but it doesn't become a sort of, a defining element of that particular story. It's part of his character, and that's it.
I'm speaking with actor Luke Thompson. He's here with me now in studio to discuss Benedict Bridgerton's character on Bridgerton. It's now streaming on Netflix. Another issue which really touched me is class. Mm-hmm. How class dictates who we should marry, who we should be with. And it leads to your sort of now infamous line of, "Won't you be my mistress?" to Sophie.
Fantastic accent, by the way. I feel like you were whipping it out a couple of times.
Thank
it's
you
really
very
impressive.
much.
Yeah.
Why did he think that was the right thing to say?
I don't know if it was the right thing to say.
But he thought it was somehow.
Yeah, I think, it came out. Look, I think what's lovely about it is that it's a controversial moment, and I know that it upset a lot of people, and I think that's good.
It was great.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing because, again, it sort of ties into what we were just talking about. I think, Benedict, so far, we've experienced him as quite a sort of sensitive and tuned in and open character. And so to have him in that moment, when he's faced with someone that he really likes, mm-hmm. do something which could seem like completely out of character, but I think actually is betraying the fact that he is scared of giving someone everything. And I think it is quite a male thing, like trying to sort of compartmentalize his life and be like, right, well, okay, maybe you can be my mistress and then we can, like separate all this out. And obviously that's not falling in love. Falling in love is joining all the dots, I think. But, he's a character who he lost his dad and had to watch his mum mourn his dad. So you can see why he's probably not had a shining example, a very happy example of what it means to love someone, because you bet everything on someone and then you lose everything. So I think it's one of those lovely controversial moments. And again, I think I welcome any kind of reaction to it. I think anyone's entitled to think whatever they like about it. To be honest, I'm more interested in other people's responses than in mine, to be honest. But it's a wonderful moment, I think.
Let's talk to Suzanne, who's calling in from Philadelphia. Hi, Suzanne. Thanks for calling all of it. You're on the air with Luke Thompson.
Hi, Allison. Hi, Luke.
Hi.
First of all, just love your show. Love both shows. And the question that I would have for Benedict,
yes.
or Luke, as you play him, I looked at you this season as you finding a mirror of yourself, the person of you that you were so afraid to become vulnerable enough to be out there. Did you see that happen, or did it hit you like a ton of bricks? It seemed like it did when you saw her from across the room. But I do think that she was all that you wanted to be.
Wow.
And you were kind of overwhelmed by the fact that she was a maid. And that kind of jarred a bit. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I think what a wonderful analogy. Thank you. That's absolutely right. I think meeting someone and finding someone like that is sort of like coming face to face with a mirror, both in the sense that you see yourself reflected, as in they make you see you in a totally different way. I think that's the most interesting thing about love, I think, is that it is absolutely, you're right, about finding it's finding someone who sees you and accepts you. But the most interesting thing about love, I think, is that actually also it's finding someone who, through who they are, stretch you out of yourself. I think that's always the most interesting thing. Maybe I say that because I'm an actor and I'm interested in the idea of like stretching out of yourself and who you can become rather than like just settling with who you are and being in your sort of like own patterns. But I do think that's right. I think I often think of like Sophie and Benedict as a bit of a yin and yang situation. I think Sophie, her major colour is sort of being more of a realist, and then she has this little spark of fantasy about her. And Benedict is this fantasist, and he does have this small part of him as well that does want to be more serious and knows that that is what life is about ultimately. And so they bring out they bring out that aspect in each other. But I mean, actually, I think the mirror analogy is even better. So, yeah, I'm going to ditch the yin yang now. It's a shame. It's the end of the press tour. Otherwise, I'd have run with that. But yeah, it's a beautiful analogy.
All right, because of this thing, this is my phone. The algorithm knows that I've been researching you and has sent up.
So now that's it.
All over the place.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about you. I learned that you're part Indian. I learned that you grew up in France.
Correct. Yeah,
you speak French fluently.
I do speak French, yeah.
I did not know you played the piano.
I do play the piano, yeah.
How did you start playing the piano? You play beautifully.
Thank you. I started playing it quite young, and it sort of, I mean, at one point I maybe even wanted to be a pianist, I think, growing up. I really love classical music. I've sort of like got very, I think there's something about this, that it's so epic and generous, and I was quite an epic child in the sense of like in my head like it was all very sort of like big in my head, I guess. So that kind of music always sort of like fit me, I guess. But also I think I've sort of held on to it because being an actor, you know, particularly before Bridgerton, I think, you know, you can spend days and days and days waiting for the phone to ring. And you can feel sort of like totally out of control in terms of your life. You're sort of waiting for people to give you permission to do your job. And that can be horrendous. And so actually to have something that, you know, I could sit at the piano in my flat and just play for 1, 2, 3 hours and just do something that's for me and that's just creative, I guess, and just for me has been it's been a real godsend. But it's been nice also to slowly start including it in work as well now. Yeah.
Bridgerton is in its season 4. It's streaming now on Netflix. We've been talking to actor Luke Thompson. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much. It's really nice to chat. Yeah.